Okay, today we're going to talk about hypotheses and we're going to learn how to write one. So you might have learned before that a hypothesis is an educated guess. There's a bit of a problem with that definition though. I could make a guess about whether it's going to rain today, and I don't have to tell you why. A scientist is going to do a little bit more than that. This year, we're going to explain a hypothesis as a tentative explanation, and we'll go on to the rest of this definition in a minute. But a tentative explanation means something that's not certain and something that answers a how or why type of question. So tentative is sort of like saying to be announced, or sort of like telling your mom,
well, I'm tentatively planning to go to Sarah's house, but we might go to Reagan's house instead.
And then, of course, an explanation usually has this great word in it, because. So it's going beyond just a prediction because it is saying why. So we don't just say, like, I think it's going to rain today. You say,
I think it's going to rain because the clouds in the sky are very dark and there are a lot of them. And I have noticed in the past that when the clouds are dark and when there are lots of them, it rains.
It has to be something that we can measure and observe. So, for example, with the rain, I actually can measure and observe rain, and I can measure darkness of clouds. If I had an educated guess about something that I can't actually, or even a tentative explanation about something that I can't observe, it's not going to count.
I believe that it is going to rain because Thor is going to smash the clouds and we're going to have lightning because of Thor.
I can't measure and observe Thor. I can see thunder and I can see rain. But since I cannot measure our dear friend Thor, then it is not a real hypothesis. We also have to be able to prove it wrong if it is wrong. And scientists will call this falsifiable. In this case, with our good friend Thor, I could try to prove to you that there was no such thing as Thor, but if you were really persistent, then you might just say,
oh no, Thor's invisible. I know that there's Thor because I love Thor and he's my favorite superhero. And I definitely know that he's up there.
So there's no way of proving you wrong. So even if it's true, it's not a good hypothesis because there's no way to tell if it really is wrong, and that means there's really no way to tell if it's right either. So again, just because something's not falsifiable doesn't necessarily mean that it's not true, but there's no way to tell, so it's not a good scientific hypothesis. So how can we write a hypothesis then? Now that we know what it is, we know it's a tentative explanation, we know that it is something we can measure and something that we could prove wrong if it is wrong. It depends a lot on the situation. So again, we always need to give an explanation, so we're going to want that magic word because in there, and it gives it in advance. The point of a hypothesis is that it helps explain the future. So if it's a comparative question, it might be something like, who takes longer getting ready, boys or girls? With the hypothesis, you'll compare your options, you'll say which one will be more than the other, and then explain why. So for example, in that case, maybe teen girls will spend more time getting ready for school on average than teen boys because girls usually have longer hair, which takes more time to take care of. This is not the only hypothesis. We could also have said maybe that teen boys will spend more time getting ready for school because teen boys like to play Fortnite before they leave for school and on average more. Or we could say any number of things that maybe don't rely on stereotypes so much. As long as we have a good explanation. Also, maybe you've seen the videos with cats jumping. The poor cat is just minding its own business and maybe it's licking its paws or something. And then all of a sudden, its favorite or not so favorite human puts behind it a terrifying green cucumber. And then all of a sudden the poor cat is like scared out of its mind. Maybe you had questions about that. Why does the cat jump when you put a cucumber behind it? Is not a testable question. So maybe you'd think about some more specifics, like maybe it jumps because this looks an awful lot like a snake. So if you thought that, then maybe you would come up with a hypothesis that if you put out, instead of a cucumber, if you put a head of lettuce, then I don't think that the cat would jump, because the problem is this one looks like a snake, this one doesn't. So then your hypothesis would be that placing long green vegetables behind cats will make them jump higher and more often than round or leafy green vegetables, because long vegetables look more like snakes and cats are scared of snakes. So we've explained really in detail why we think that the long green vegetables are scarier than the round or leafy green vegetables. So again, if you've got a comparison and you're comparing two things, like in this case, the long or the not long vegetables, then you're going to say this is more than that because why? Sometimes though, your investigation is an experiment instead of a comparison. So instead of comparing which is more, you're actually going to be comparing two sets of things that are cause and effect. And you could also be doing an experiment to see that there is no relationship. So again, with an experiment, your testable question is something about what the effect of one thing is on another. And so maybe your question is something like, does water cause plants to grow taller? And maybe your hypothesis is that water does cause the plants to grow taller, and you'd explain why. Or maybe your hypothesis is no, water does not have an effect on the height of plants, and you would also have to explain that. So in this case, we have if something changed, then what would happen? Because why? So if plants are watered, they will grow taller because plants need water to grow. That is one possible hypothesis. So in summary, a hypothesis is a scientist's idea of why or how two things are related that they can test.